Jay here, welcome to Eons of Battle. I have committed myself to getting good at Warhammer 40k, and to achieve that goal, this weekend I participated in my first tournament. And it was nerve-wracking. Number one, I kind of picked the worst possible time to get good at Warhammer 40k because the Leviathan mission pack has just ended and now we're in the Pariah Nexus phase of 10th edition. And so I had 1 week to prepare to learn all of these new primary, secondary, secret missions and deployment maps. Number one, I was super nervous to just try to play well at 40k because I've played a lot of 10th edition at this point, mostly losing to Sean. But I usually jump from thing to thing to thing to thing, trying out different models, different things I just recently bought or recently painted. And so now I'm trying to craft the perfect Space Marine list. And that is really hard to do because the Space Marine Codex is stacked. There are so many different units, and so many of them are small tweaks on one another. And so it's so hard to know, am I just piloting this unit wrong, or should I be taking this very similar unit that is sometimes next to it on the page? Another thing that made me really nervous is I'm currently not very good, and so I didn't want to show up to the tournament and just ruin my opponent's day because they're all there, they know what they're doing, they're there to make something happen, and so I don't want to be a speed bump in their journey of 40k greatness. And so in preparation for the tournament, which was Saturday, it was a 3-game, you just play Warhammer all day event. And so the week leading up to it, I played 3 more games of Warhammer 40k, 2 in person, 1 on Tabletop Simulator, just to try out lists and to try to really understand the rules to make sure that I don't make any mistakes, that I don't make any egregious errors, and that I can actually perform a little bit at the tournament. And at the tournament, I didn't win. In fact, I came in dead last, but man, I made it happen. I scored in the 50s every single game. I had 3 games, finished them all 5 rounds. The Tuesday beforehand, I played against a rando at the friendly local game store, and we played all 5 rounds of Warhammer 40k in 1 hour and 40 minutes, or 2 hours and 40 minutes, which is fast. I am a slow player, Sean's a slow player. Usually our games of Warhammer take like 4 hours, or sometimes they take, if we manage to get it done in 3 hours, it means that we just talked through the last round or two, because usually I'm tabled. I didn't get tabled at the tournament. The last game I did fairly well, but it's a different beast playing classic 40k versus playing competitive 40k, because from competitive 40k, you're almost playing the mission and your secondary and primary objectives more so than playing the opponent's army. Sometimes when you're just playing a fun game with your friends, you'll sort of ignore the secondary missions because you just really want to punch his Land Raider with one of your models. But in a tournament situation, you make sure that you're not leaving a single point on the table. You have to be getting your primaries and secondaries every single turn, and I managed it every single turn. My first game at the tournament was with a very, very good Deathwatch player. I was not expecting to see a lot of Deathwatch at the tournament, but he played really well. He scored a perfect 100 and I got 48 points, which I think is respectable. And I wasn't tabled. So we went all 5 rounds and it went really well. My second game was against Blood Angels. And now I'm really envious of Blood Angels because I play Black Templar, a close combat focused Space Marine army. Black Templar can bring the heat in close combat. That was probably my favorite game because we're 2 close combat Space Marine armies, so we just sprinted at each other and smashed in the middle of the board. It was really fun. And then my last game was with Imperial Guard. I'm so sick of playing Imperial Guard. I don't want to see another Leman Russ or Rogel Dorn battle tank for the rest of my life. It's just not fun to play against. Toughness 12, 2-up save, always gets covered because the models are so big. And the Dorn even has a rule of ignoring 1 allocated damage per game. And so even if the stars align and I actually manage to do damage to the tank, it can just ignore it. It is Imperial Guard into Space Marines, I feel like, is a punishing matchup, but it is one that I'm going to have to get good at. Another thing I did in preparation for the tournament was understand my strengths and weaknesses. My strengths are unbridled enthusiasm and loving Imperial or Black Templar Space Marines. My flaws are I am bad at vehicles. Every single time I take vehicles in Warhammer 40k, I don't know how to pilot them well, and so they tend to get sniped off the board early game and leave me on the back foot. And so I know playing against really good people, they're gonna know how to deal with those vehicles. So I decided just to not bring any. And so I put it all into Swarm Space Marines, bringing some of the heaviest hitters in my collection. I would say the MVP, and arguably the thing that should be removed from my list immediately, is 2 squads of Assault Centurions, one of my all-time favorite miniatures in all of Warhammer 40k. These guys were great. They punch like a tank because they're literally guys wearing tanks of armor. They're decent at shooting with their twin-linked melta-guns that have a relatively short range, but they are tough. 2-up save, 4 wounds apiece meant that it did take my opponents it took them turns to chew through them, which was really, really nice. Similarly to that, I also brought 3 squads of classic Terminators. I took them all with Chain Fists. Chain Fists, probably not a good idea. Even with anti-vehicle 3-up, they still bounced off of every vehicle I threw them against, but they stuck around for most of the game, which I can't say for every single one of my units. Some of the things, I broke it down into what do I want to survive and hold objectives, what do I want to run around the board scoring me points, and then what do I want I didn't take a beat stick. And the reason I didn't take a beat stick is I didn't want to have something that my opponent could blow away and then I'm down a quarter of my army and I'm just not gonna win the game. And so the only thing I took that's like cool and good is I took a squad of 5 Blade Guard Veteran, and by Blade Guard Veteran, I mean Sword Brethren for the Black Templar with the attached Emperor's Champion. And because I didn't take any vehicles, I didn't have a good delivery system for them. Probably should have left them in strategic reserve so that they can pop in the game turn 2 or turn 3 and then maybe be able to get off a charge. But yeah, they didn't do much, unfortunately. They got killed almost every single game. Actually, they did get killed every single game, but I do need to work on my vehicle game, be able to take them in a game, be able to keep them alive for at least turn 1 and 2 so that they can actually deliver some of my units into the fray. But it was really, really fun. It was exhausting, it was nerve-wracking, but everyone I played with was super fun, super nice guys. I had a ton of fun at the tournament. I learned a ton. I filled up a wide rule composition notebook. I was the only one there at the tournament taking notes, but I think I was the newest player at the event. I was the overall loser of the event, but scoring 50 points a game, I'm gonna call that a win. There was no game where I just got stomped. There was no game where I just gave my opponents nothing to do. And I only had 1 game where somebody scored a perfect game against me. So I must have been doing at least a tiny little something right. Moving forward in my Warhammer 40k career, I'm gonna go to a tournament at least once a month. Definitely gonna be changing this list. I really want to keep the Assault Centurions in the list, but I don't know if they're gonna make it because they're 150 points a squad, which is relatively cheap for what they are. But if I start to add vehicles, those points add up really, really fast. I mean, a Land Crusader is what, 220 points? Like that's a big chunk of my army. A Land Raider Crusader, I can take 1 squad of Assault Centurions and the Sword Brethren brick with the Emperor's Champion. If anybody plays Black Templar or even Space Marines or just knows more about 40k than I do, which is most of you guys out there, please in the comments below, give me any ideas or tips or list building because I want to get good. I want to play my Black Templar. My Black Templar have been with me for such a long time. I've played probably 100 games of Warhammer 40k with Black Templar, all the way back from when I was in high school and we just brought whatever models we owned and made them fight and got all the rules wrong, to learning 8th edition and 7th edition and a little tiny bit of 9th edition and then 10th edition coming back strong into the game. It's really, really fun and really exciting. And it is fun. I remember at the end of the tournament, another thing I was nervous about with the tournament was just getting bored because it's like 10 hours of playing just Warhammer 40k, but I totally did not because in the heat of battle, you don't feel it. Each game was 2 hours and 40 minutes long, and they go by so fast because you're just moving and shooting and thinking and charging and using your secondaries and trying to get off your primary missions. And so, like when we got like the 15-minute like warning every single game, it's like, whoa, the game is almost over? That's crazy. And then as soon as the dice stopped rolling on the last game, I was spent. I was so unbelievably tired. And then all Sunday, I was also just completely out of my mind exhausted. It's almost like I actually did something, like I exercised or I actually like did something physical. I was so tired, but it feels good to be in that state. It feels good to like, I did something instead of just playing Yahtzee and exploding kittens all Saturday long. I actually competed in a tournament. I played the game, I used my models, I pushed them around the table. I learned a lot. Once again, the Wide Rule Composition Notebook. I took copious notes and I learned a lot of things. Number one, suppressors, kind of the MVP. They scored me points every single game. People don't really play these because people don't really own these because they're impossible to buy. I think Games Workshop still sells the Vanguard Start Collecting box, which you can get these models in if you want to get a whole bunch of other Phobos stuff, which I don't really want to, but 85 points for a little deep striker that has an okay gun. Not bad at all. The reason I took these is because I didn't have yet a second squad of suppressors. Suppressors are a classic staple of competitive 40k lists. They have a rule called something where they can deep strike in 3 inches away from their opponents instead of 9 inches, which is more typical. But they didn't do much. They only get 6 shots with their plasma annihilators. I got lucky one game and my opponent left one of his heroes, the Space Marine Lieutenant with combi weapon, out in the open. And so these guys deep struck in, blew him up, and then got me kill a leader secondary. So these guys they're 130 points, which is really, really expensive to use them as kind of a throwaway unit. Where the suppressors, 85, drop them in an enemy backline, drop them on the sideboard, drop a midboard for the secure middle objective ability or secondary objective. Like, these guys were great. I want to buy more. And I looked on eBay, it's like $100 to try to buy these separately because Games Workshop, just make a box with these guys in it. I'll buy it, but I'm not gonna get scalped on eBay. And speaking of getting scalped on eBay, at the beginning of this video, I mentioned the Pariah Nexus mission deck. Games Workshop, let me buy a Pariah Nexus mission deck. Every single person who plays Warhammer needs those cards. They're a prerequisite for playing the game. And they sold out immediately, are out of stock. I called a bunch of different stores. They all say they don't know when they're gonna get more. Everyone needs them. Every single Warhammer player needs them. You can't get them. Literally, I found a bootleg copy for Tabletop Simulator, and before bed every night that week, I was playing Tabletop Simulator by myself, just reading the cards off of the computer screen, because that's what I had to do to actually read them. Thank goodness my opponents actually were smart and pre-ordered a copy, so they actually had them for the tournament, because I did not. And that was also another thing that really threw me through a loop, is I just was not as familiar with the Pariah Nexus cards as I was with the Leviathan cards. But it was fun. The Eradicators were great. Actually, my opponents helped me a lot with the Eradicators because the first game, I just deployed them alongside my army and marched them up the board and they kind of got shot. And so my first opponent gave me a suggestion of actually keeping them in Deep Strike Reserve and then bringing them on turn 2 or 3 so that they can be in a little bit better of a firing position and almost using them as a suicide unit to drop bigger vehicles and monsters. And that was a really, really big help. 40k players are really, really fun and just nice. Like, I've never had a bad game of Warhammer 40k because you're just there to play. You're there to play arguably the dumbest, most obtuse game on planet Earth. But how do you not have a fun time? I brought Cyclone missile launchers on all of my Terminators, and I think once they actually hit. They should hit a lot. Like, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s often, or wounding on 4s, 2 shots, strength 9, like it should do some damage, but man, they just kept bouncing. What I should do, and please, once again, leave comments of what Space Marine units I should buy, build, and paint to make this army a little bit better. I know vehicles, I have a bunch of vehicles that I'm currently working on, but I should get some Hammernators, because Hammernators get 4 wounds apiece, and 4 wounds apiece is really, really nice, especially against Imperial Guard, because a lot of Imperial Guard, Royal Dorn tanks, I'm looking at you, a lot of their vehicles are flat damage 3, which does a really good job of squashing 3 wound models, but 4 wounds, all of a sudden, 3 wounds takes them down to 1 wound remaining, and then another 3 wounds kills that one guy and then wastes 2 damage. So Hammernators are probably something that I should add to this army. Hammernators with Tannhäuser's Bones for the 2-up save, 4-up invuln, 5-up feel no pain. There's something to that. I definitely am committed to the Black Templar Righteous Crusade. I've been playing around with all of the different Space Marine detachments, especially Gladius, but I think I'm just not tactically minded enough for Gladius because you get like 1 turn of advance and charge, 1 turn of fall back and charge, and 1 turn of advance and shoot. And it's hard to know exactly when to pop those at the top of the turn and be like, okay, is this the turn where I'm gonna get all my shooting off? Is this the turn where I'm gonna get all of my good combats off? It's a trickier style to play into than Righteous Crusade, charge the opponent in glorious close combat and get lethal hits or sustained hits. Probably lethal hits. They seem to be a little bit better, especially when a lot of my guys aren't throwing ridiculous, like Blood Angels amounts of dice. I had so much fun. I would recommend, I don't know if I would recommend a proper tournament, especially if you haven't done some practice games to really make sure that you know exactly what you're doing, just so that you can do the math really, really fast. But if you can get like some sort of a friendly game, like competitive game in, or just run a tournament with your friends and say, we're gonna play fast and we're gonna play hard and we're gonna get through it all. We're gonna get through a bunch of games. I think it's totally worth doing. It's a ton of fun. I love my Space Marines. Even though I lost all my games, I feel like I did a great job of the tournament. I am excited to play more 40K. Gonna do a lot of TTS, gonna do a lot of random games in the evenings to try to get good. Ooh, and speaking of get good, question. Sword Brethren and Blade Guard Veteran. Very similar unit. The Blade Guard Veteran have power swords and a 4-up invulnerable save. The Sword Brethren have more bodies and power swords. Like, they're such a remarkably similar unit. I don't know which one wins. Probably the Blade Guard Veteran, because they can also take the Lightning Claws and a Thunderhammer in the squad. But the 4-up invuln is, there's something to the 4-up invuln. The units that I had the most success with are probably the units I was destined to have the most success with, which is tough stuff. The Centurions, the Terminators, and the Blade Guard Veteran. And the squishier normal Space Marine units pretty much got wiped out every single game, but that is to be expected. I am super excited. I'm probably gonna run this list tonight when I play Sean in TTS, and we'll see how it works, but it definitely needs some fine tuning, some resculpting, maybe even a total ground up rework, but I am really excited to make it happen. And you know what else I'm really excited for? That's right, our Patreon. Ever wanted to fight your battles in the labyrinthine hallways of a starship, moving your models in tight formation through a maze of corridors, bulkheads, and junctions where retreat is impossible and danger is around every corner? Well, the Eons of Battle Starship Interior is here to make that dream a reality. For the month of July, subscribers to our Patreon will receive the Starship Interior, a set of claustrophobic, dynamic, and modular hallways that are scaled to perfectly suit wargaming miniatures and give you a new way to play. And if you always want to be up to date on the goings on here at Eons of Battle and be entered into our monthly giveaways, this month we're picking 3 followers to win this month's terrain. You can follow the link in the description to sign up to our newsletter. One of the big reasons why I wanted to start taking Warhammer 40K seriously is I have so many armies and so many models. It feels like a waste to just collect. For years and years and years, I just collected models and barely played. Now that I have all these armies and all of these models, it feels silly not to become one of the greatest Warhammer 40K players in the world, or at least being able to score more than 50 points. Thanks for watching.